Welcome back to the Expat Files. Tay Nix here, doing a little tour of the battlefield one last time. This area of Puerto Rico we are in the northeast corner, more or less. San Juan and the airport are about 30 minutes that way without traffic. But this area here, the kiosks, is a big draw later today and most days. But certainly on weekends. This place is a circus, and I mean that almost literally. The kind of tourists that come here from the U.S., from big pockets of Puerto Rican population living in the U.S. who come back to the island to hang out and enjoy themselves. And there's a casino and a hotel that was put in just behind me that I just passed, and they do a pretty snappy business here, but it's women who are far too heavy to be wearing bikinis. It's tattooed savages and generally making a scene of themselves. And so this place here, I don't know that you'd take your family here, quite honestly. I mean, I have done, but it's wild. The smell of weed is everywhere. And the best restaurant here, in case you come, is La Parisha Bar and Grill. Fresh lobster. These guys have their own fishing boats, or they have very close relationship with all the fishermen. There's some lobsters right there in the tank. Not sure you can see that, but great stuffed lobster, delicious, like top tier, also local cuisine. But this is the draw right here. This to me is the nicest beach on the entire island. That's a big statement, but because there are so many good beaches, but there's none within 30 minutes of the airport, which is why we actually settled here, not the beach per se, but the proximity to San Juan. And this bay, you see how calm and placid it is. Now, there's not a lot of wind today anyway, because you would see breakers. There on the horizon is a reef. All of Puerto Rico sits on a big shelf that comes up out of the ocean. And between 1 and 5 kilometers offshore, there's a shelf, and it gets quite shallow, anywhere between 10 and 20 feet. And so the ocean swell gets broken long before it gets to land. But more to the point, they try to keep the garbage situation under control here, because it gets a little crazy when this place is crowded. But the main thing about this beach, and the thing that makes it so pleasant, is this peninsula that I'm driving up to, that you'll see in a moment. It sticks out from south to north, so we're looking north here, and that peninsula sticks out, and the prevailing winds, the trade winds, come through from the east every day, obviously. If you think offshore structures like where to bank, how to invest in foreign real estate, and where to set up your foreign trust are difficult or complicated, they're not. That's not the hard part of creating an international lifestyle. The hardest part is the decision to go. That's why I wrote Secrets of the Expat Adventure, to share with you a deeply personal view of what happens when you decide to cast off the chains of a normal life full of predictable outcomes. I don't want to spoil the ending for you, but you quickly discover yourself living your best life, the life you were meant to live, instead of the one you're stuck with. Across 156 pages, I'll share the incredible adventure I've enjoyed because of my decision to leave my old life behind and create an international lifestyle. I lay out for you the consequences of remaining in a life or location where everything is familiar, contrasting that with the almost magical growth and gain that is possible once you decide to take the path of adventure. There's something deeply mysterious about choosing an adventurous life. Once you commit, helpers appear, and events seem to unfold in an almost magically choreographed manner. You find yourself learning, living, and loving your life in a way that you thought you'd lost forever. There is no financial gain that compares with the recovery of the best parts of yourself. Fortunately, the decision to internationalize is also a great way to get wealthy. I give you real examples of how much easier it was for me to find and profit from the real estate and other investment opportunities I came across simply by choosing to play on the very uneven playing field of developing markets. If you're worried about what's happening in your home country and you're on the fence about whether or not you should create your own plan B, Secrets of the Expat Adventure will give you clarity and inspiration to choose your own path of freedom and adventure. I promise you'll never look at your life the same way again once you discover what an international lifestyle can do for you, your family, and your wealth. To get your copy, click the link below this video. And it blocks the prevailing winds. And so this entire bay is like a swimming pool almost every day, with very few exceptions. If there's a storm passing to the north and further out to sea, you'll get big surge coming in, obviously. But by and large, the prevailing 15-mile-an-hour winds that happen pretty much every day, like clockwork, this bay and this entire public beach here, this is called Balneario, and there's a massive public parking lot that could take probably thousands of cars. I mean, it's so big, I've never seen it full, even on the busiest of days, because the beach is just massive. This is a little boat ramp where your editor launches, so you can take the boat out here. I set the boat up, and then that little ramp there, you can walk it in. People launch their jet skis, obviously annoying. And you can see here the cut. But this whole beach, which is cordoned off with buoys for swimmers to keep the jet skis out and all the rest, but it's flat almost every day. And that's rare. Like, there's almost no beach that's like that, and the beach is quite wide, plenty of sand, like tons of area for beachgoers, swimmers. People set up and barbecue and bring canopies to keep the sun off, and it's just stunning. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You can see the point all the way to that point, but the beach continues around that point. So this entire area here is just swamped with people. We'll take a tour down here, why not? I want to see what the boat ramp looks like. I've launched my boat out of here multiple times. It's a great sail. It's a really, really good place to both for boating, for me to come out to sea and sail along the north coast, which is really pretty. It's very interesting. There's all kinds of, like I said, there's a reef, so you can get it out by the reef and see all kinds of sea life. And the wind is great once you get far enough away from the peninsula, that which I'll show you here in a second. And so this place has been just a treasure, and I've had such an excellent time. The real question is, yeah, it looks good now. Sometimes when the tide comes in, it washes out this area, and the drop is a little too much for my Toyota sedan and my trailer for my boat. But right now it looks good, so we could sail out of here. I just got back from a sailing trip, so I will not be doing that anytime soon. I sailed to Vieques. You'll see the video that I put together on the south coast of Vieques. But let's take a little stroll over to this is the main beach with the large parking lot up ahead, so I'll drive you over there because it is just spectacular. Why Puerto Rico? Well, aside from the obvious and the evidence of your senses, aside from the fact that it's just stunningly beautiful, maybe the best beaches I've ever been to. I've been to Punta Cana on the easternmost tip of Dominican Republic. Stunning, beautiful place, but it's got nothing on Puerto Rico, and it's got nothing on this beach. It's a little more upscale. You got to stay at a 5-star resort in order to get in there, but this beach is as good as beaches get. And if you need something better than this, right, you're splitting hairs. You can see the river here cut a channel. We've had a lot of rain this rainy season, and so that river moves, but right now it's cut a little channel in there, so if you're jogging, you ain't gonna make it past that without wetting your shoes. But you see this whole area here, it's just unbelievable, and people swim out, and like I said, usually you see all kinds of jet skis ripping back and forth. So, if the beach and sort of Caribbean paradise is your thing, you got to look wide and far to get anything better than what is available in this little corner of Puerto Rico. But that is not why we decided to settle here. We came here at a time when I was working for a big publisher and was able to work remotely. It was lockdown year, so everybody was working remotely at that moment. But I had my eyes on Puerto Rico because as money started rolling in, it made great sense to deny the dirtbags running our government and institutions as much of my income as possible. Not just from a selfish point of view, but because the world moving in the direction that it's moving, and my own sense of, hey, I gotta look in the mirror and like the guy that I see, I ain't paying for what's going on. And nothing in the intervening years has made me question that decision. But to be sure, sending weapons to the Ukraine, right, to fight Russians, and right, that whole debacle, the unbelievable graft and corruption of that whole operation. But sending weapons to Israeli forces to shoot children in the head and things of this nature. Fuck these people, right? I feel better about my life that I denied the assholes in Washington access to my own labor and the fruits of my labor and the funds that I produced by the sweat of my labor and the sweat of my brow. That mattered to me. It doesn't matter to everybody, but it matters to more people than will admit and will take action to prevent it. And so Puerto Rico was a statement. Puerto Rico was, the deal is if you live on the island for 183 days per calendar year, and you pay a $5,000 fee to some government agency for whatever, they get to extract their few drops of blood, because that's all it was to me. The first year we were here, my income that year was slightly under $1 million. And in the US, we would have paid north of $400,000 for that income, or let's say roughly $350,000 in taxes. All told, we paid the $5,000 fee. You have to donate $5,000 to a charity of your choosing. I partnered up with and met a fellow in San Juan that I met through like a social networking group who was helping folks. My friend Chin has a Puerto Rican 501c3 that qualified for my donation, and you donate $5,000, and he was helping people rebuild. They were still rebuilding after Hurricane Maria from 2017. And then on top of that, we kicked off a food security project of local folks trying to generate local food production. After Hurricane Maria in 2017, boy oh boy, I mean, the place was so devastated, and a lot of people just left. I mean, there are agricultural operations with big greenhouses and like big areas, and most of the island's uninhabited, right? Almost all the population is San Juan, Ponce, and then, sort of dotted throughout the landscape. But Puerto Rico's large. It's very large. The GDP here is $100 billion. Like, it's not a small place. That's $100 billion a year. It's north of $100 billion now. There's a lot of industry that has come here, pharmaceutical manufacturing, right? They make pills and drugs here, I assume. Walmart has a huge presence. Walmart's headquarters is in Puerto Rico to take advantage of the same tax treaty that I take advantage of. But most of the lands, like most of the actual land, is arable land. There's lots of cattle, horses running around. There's huge areas where food production was going on in the old days. And then with the devastation of the hurricane in 2017, a lot of these farmers just left, and they never came back. And they have no intention of picking up their farming implements again and trying to rebuild. And that's the tragedy of living in the hurricane belt, is that every few years you're just going to get wiped out. And so food production was way down. Local food production obviously matters. Now, we were in the lockdowns. Like, nobody knew exactly how this whole thing was going to shake out. It was a horrible period. It was a horrible, thinking back about that time, it was really just a very poor, I suppose a good effort by globalist assholes to attempt to gain control of the world's population through really nefarious means. And that meant that local food production mattered to me. Now, our home backs up to a huge tract of farmland, and I know that I could have put my shoulder to the wheel, and we could have planted fruit trees and had chickens and rabbits and all the rest. I have a friend who did this on the other end of the island. He owns about 50 acres, and he's got a really good self-sustaining operation and farm and food and a huge food forest and all the rest. So his family's set, come what may. And I could have done that here. I didn't do it because it was clear also that as bad as things appeared coming out of the early 2020s, that it wasn't necessary to do that. The island still gets plenty of commerce from the U.S. A lot of food is shipped from the U.S., so it's not cheap. It's like all island prices, anything that gets shipped from somewhere else. And Puerto Rico has this asinine, there's a law on the books that's a U.S. law that all shipping that touches Puerto Rico has to first touch a U.S. port, which is incredibly inefficient. So Puerto Rico has no trade with anyone else except the U.S. You cannot No ship, like you can't ship diesel from Venezuela, right, to Puerto Rico. It has to go through the US, sanctions aside, okay? And so Puerto Rico could be this booming sort of Singapore-like strategic location where commerce from Europe, from Latin America, South America, anything passing through the Panama Canal, I mean, this place could just turn into a booming, like a real shining jewel, but it won't happen because it's still under the thumb of the US government. So there you have it. That's politics for you. Heaven knows when or how that will change. The amount of money that comes from the U.S. government to Puerto Rico is, the last I heard from a reasonably reliable source, a lawyer that I talked to, was roughly $12 billion. So they cost the U.S. government, let's say, over $10 billion a year in support and aid and whatever kind of corrupt graft is going on, where the U.S. government has to pay Puerto Rico to be part of its empire. The U.S. never really got the empire thing right. The U.S. never really understood that if you're going to have an empire, the whole idea is that the subject states pay you, right? Instead, Washington is busy paying members of the empire to hang around and be harassed. And so it's a very strange relationship. Obviously, it would be great if all that changed. It would certainly be better for Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican people, but nobody cares about that or them. And that's a tragedy. It's terrible that the situation is the way it is. But most of what you see in Puerto Rico are, quite frankly, old, out of shape, obese people waiting for the end of their lives. There are young people and young families, but there's not a lot of young people with ambition on the island. That's for sure. And fine people, wonderful people. They'll help you in a second if you need help. But it's not a dynamic place, right? It has a kind of bad odor of loserville, just because the people have been beat up for so long. You know, before the U.S. took over at the end of the Spanish-American War, the Spaniards too, right, had really beat this place into submission. And so, in any case, this is my tour of Puerto Rico. We're moving. We've sold the house, and my time in Puerto Rico is coming to an end. And I'm not sad about it. It's time to go, but the tax treaty will go away next year probably. We'll see what happens to some of the assets. The deal with Puerto Rico and being here, as I said, you got to be here 183 days. You got to pay a $5,000 payment to a charity each year, and you pay a $5,000 fee to some government agency that my accountant takes care of for me. And on that, you pay 0 capital gains, and you pay 4% flat corporate tax. So you take a salary. I'm a writer, so I take a salary on my writing jobs and income, and that salary has to be roughly commensurate. Usually we claim about $50,000. That's a reasonable salary for a Puerto Rican writer. And I pay whatever the going rate is, like 10% on that. And then all the rest of the money, you pay 4% flat corporate tax. So it's a screaming good deal. And there is no place in all of God's green earth where U.S. passport holders and taxpayers can avoid the IRS and pay as little of your hard-earned money to the government. People bring up and talk about, CPI and, rising gas prices or, home prices and this and that. But the truth is, right, interest rates on your mortgage, et cetera, et cetera. The truth is that the thing that you spend the most money on every single year happens to you on April 15th when you got to send a check to the IRS. And it is brutal. And nobody really takes that huge outlay of capital that could otherwise be put to productive use into account. Almost nobody talks about the biggest expense, and the biggest expense is the money that the government takes from you in taxes. And so Puerto Rico made infinite sense. It fast-tracked my ability to accumulate wealth quickly. And as you've seen, I lived in just a stunning portion of the Caribbean for 4 years as my son went from being an infant into now an age where it makes sense to get off the island and seek some other better experiences for him. So not totally sure. I am sure where we're going yet, but I'll keep that a secret to keep you watching. This mountain range up above the tree line here, that's Yunque, that's the national park. It's a very unique, biodiverse place. There's things here that don't exist anywhere else in the world. Frogs and fauna and flora and just all kinds of really, really interesting things. And this little neighborhood that's been our home for the last 4 years has been very pleasant. This strange, boxy, flat-roofed construction that always requires you, why they have flat roofs in Puerto Rico is anybody's guess, but you got to seal the roof because you'll get leaks and fungus builds up and it gets nasty up there with all the rainwater. But a really beautiful spot, farmland over here with all kinds of livestock, cattle, geese, iguanas, etc. And just an incredibly pleasant place to have camped out for 4 years. So that's what I want to share with you. Couple quick things. If you're interested in internationalizing, if you want to know how you can save money on your income and taxes, if you want to understand how to structure yourself offshore, the good news is all of that stuff is the easy part. It requires a little bit of professional input. That's why I teamed up with a US-based legal firm that can get your ducks in a row. And to me, what's coming down the pipe with just the completely out of control behavior coming out of the US, out of Washington, there's no recognition that we don't need a war with Russia. We don't need to be propping up Europe. We don't need to consider the Chinese our enemies. None of that shit is necessary at all. And so there's going to be real fireworks because when governments get bankrupt and things get out of control, they tap their citizens almost like tapping a vein. And they will bleed the citizenry for as much as they can get away with before actual civil unrest appears, and then they will crack down on that. And history is very clear about this, so you don't need to time it. You don't need to think about when the shoe is going to drop. All you need to really understand is we're in the very, very late stages of a large cyclical end, the end of a huge cycle that is going to result in a lot of tears and lost capital and real hard times for a lot of people. Right now, the U.S. stock market, I talked to my friend Chris McIntosh yesterday, the U.S. stock market is 60+%, 65, 68%, whatever it is, of all global stock markets. So the amount of money that is chasing gains and returns in the S&P and the NASDAQ and the Dow is the highest and most distorted and out of balance that it's ever been, ever, by orders of magnitude beyond the dot-com boom and bust. And so what does that mean? Well, again, you don't have to be a PhD in history to understand that these things repeat. And so there's not much more upside left. But what you can do is diversify yourself away from things and places that are on the way down. And one of the best ways to do that is to set yourself up offshore and to structure your wealth, your family wealth. We are in a time where it is far more important to preserve what you have than to hope that NVIDIA doubles from here. And so if you want my help with that, that's what we do here. I'm happy to talk to you. You can set up a free 15-minute phone call and tell me about your situation. There's also a great live event coming up in Dallas. This is part of the international group of a network of business people and real, absolute ass-kicking people, most of whom are entrepreneurs and business owners in their own right, who during the lockdown years decided to get together and do something about it. It's called the Mavericks Project. I'll put the link below this video. And that's enough out of me. Remember, your freedom begins the moment you realize nobody's coming to save you. The good news is you have massive optionality still while I'm recording this. That may not last, but if you take action now, you're going to be much happier when things really start to heat up and come unglued. I'll be back with more great stuff. Thanks for watching. Mavericks Project is a private community focused on powerful connections, trusted information, and time-tested solutions to create and preserve wealth during our epoch of extreme change. The Mavericks Project was born out of the social, economic, and geopolitical schism that kicked off in 2020. A small band of contrarian misfits spent the lockdown years observing problems, analyzing the implications, and plotting solutions. Now, several times a year, we Mavericks get together in fun and fascinating locations to talk about solutions to the social dangers to your family's safety and how to avoid them, the increasing state surveillance and how to negate it, the rapidly declining U.S. empire and how we want to position for what's coming next, the risks to your family's generational wealth and how to protect it. If you think you have what it takes to be a maverick, this is your chance to come make new and better friends with some of the most accomplished people you will ever meet. Join us from November 4th to 7th in Dallas, Texas for 3 unforgettable days of action, discussion, and answers. The link for the event, along with all the details, is below this video.